Donald Trump hopes to diversify energy in the region away from Russia, and they think that Russia will lose 10 to 20 billion, I think, in that. And that also this will open up a trade nexus, ending their conflict with each other, that will improve trade in the region by 50 to 100 billion, they think, according to the World Bank, that last statistic.
There's a number of things going on. Donald Trump has realized that while it was true Putin did not invade during his 4-year tenure in a way that he had during George W. Bush and Barack Obama's and Biden, his neighbors. Remember Georgia, Ossetia, Crimea, Donbass, etc., the attempt on Kiev. That didn't mean that you didn't need leverage on Putin. And the only leverage we have had is massive arms and economic aid. And that is becoming untenable to the mega base. So what Donald Trump is trying to do is search for ways to pressure Putin, art of the deal style. One of them was, I don't know if that's going to work, a secondary oil boycott. I remember the days of Cesar Chavez here in California when he issued one against grocery stores. It didn't work all that well. It got people very angry. But the problem was he's pushing one of our allies, Modi, in India. And I'm not sure that's wise. In other words, we're not going to trade with India if you buy any Russian oil. But you can't do that with China. You don't want to get 3 billion people, Modi, India, and China. You can't just cut them out of the entire economy to pressure a state of 146 million, Russia. So he's trying to look at other reasons. This is another lever he thinks that, well, there's this former Soviet province. It's got all this energy, Caspian Sea energy, and they have this historic Turkic Armenian hatred. And if I can adjudicate this settlement and bring them more into the West, that will hurt Putin because he won't be able to do business or have the energy corridor. So that's the second thing. The third thing that's going on is these are ancient. He's intervening with Congo, Rwanda. Those are ancient tribal differences. Kosovo and Serbia, those are ancient tribal differences. In this case, religion. He's tried to adjudicate India, Pakistan. Those are ancient differences, Muslim, Hindu. So he's Ukraine and Russia. But the problem with all of these things, these are fundamentally existential hatreds. They've been there forever. So you just don't say, I'm Donald Trump, and click your fingers and stop fighting. You can say, we're going to put tariffs on you, but we're not going to put tariffs on you, or we're going to let your students come in. There are elements of leverage and pressure he has. But when you go all around the globe, you just can't by fiat say peace. It's sort of like, I touch you, you are now free, you are peaceful. And Walter Russell Mead had a very good article that Trump has to be careful that he doesn't become a Napoleon in the sense that he intervenes everywhere. So, but it is good that he's getting ceasefires, as long as they're not overhyped, that these are peace. I'll give you an example. It's very similar to, at the end of World War II, there were a communist resistance in Greece to the Nazis, and there was a monarchical, centrist, conservative resistance. And the communists were committing acts of terror against the Nazis to stop them, but they were up in the hills, and often they would retaliate on the cities. And the people told the communists, don't do that because they take us out and shoot us. Whereas the conservative people said, well, we're going to resist in different ways, but not to incur retaliations. And the communists said, well, you're selling out, et cetera, et cetera. So Churchill flew into Athens to try to adjudicate this fight and save Greece. And he did for a while. They almost blew him up in the Grand Britannia Hotel, or maybe they were going to kill him. The communists were. But they stopped the fighting in Athens. And that was what Churchill did. But it didn't last. Then you had 1 million people killed in the Civil War. Roosevelt kind of did that. He got a Nobel Prize, Teddy Roosevelt, when the Russo-Japanese War. He went over there and he tried to adjudicate it. So there's a history of presidents doing that. Woodrow Wilson tried to do the same thing in World War I with the 14 points and the Versailles. Remember what Clemenceau, who does he think he is? God? God only had 10 commandments, not 14. So it's a tricky thing to do. So Trump's got to focus on, you just can't spread yourself thin. And the fourth thing to remember about this is the degree to which people are going to listen to you or take your advice or be coerced depends on your domestic popularity. Churchill on May 9th was a colossus that strode the world. He had been the only leader on the Allies to survive on September 1st, 1939. Britain would be the only country, by the way, that would fight the first day of World War II and the last day, September 2nd, 1945. All the others either came in late or they were joining the Axis powers. But my point is this, is that he was thrown out by an election in July. Churchill was. So here he was, the most important man that Britain had produced in 500 years. And he was flying all over, he was with Roosevelt. He was working on the Yalta Conference. He had been adjudicating, as I said, Greece. He was the one that drew a little map and said, we want Turkey and Greece on our side in the Cold War. Basically, it wasn't called the Cold War. He told Stalin that, keep out. You broke all your promises. You did not allow elections in Hungary, the Czechs, Czechoslovakia, Poland. But we're going to save Greece, mother cradle of Western, and we're going to save Turkey. And we'll agree with you that Finland and Austria will not be part of NATO or whatever comes out. At that time, there was no NATO, but they'll be neutral. So he was doing all these things, but he didn't realize is the socialists back in the Socialist Labor Party were saying there's no social health care, that trains are too expensive, coal is too expensive, and they wanted to nationalize everything, and they did. So here you had this weird thing, the most powerful British man in cosmic terms in a half a millennium lost the election. So Trump is kind of like that. He's all over the world, but his source of power rests on his ability to get legislation through, like the big, beautiful bill, and get the economy sound. And this month, I guess the Wall Street Journal is in mourning because I think the inflation rate was still only 2.6 or 7. And they kept telling us, and I think Jerome Powell must be hitting his head against a wall. Oh, I wanted so much to raise interest rates because of inflation. There's no inflation, and now I'll have to lower them. I can't do that. Donald Trump will look like he beat me. Trump will probably tweet that anyway. So, bottom line, I'm glad that he's doing all these things. If there is a peace prize for such a thing, he deserves it. But I hope people don't conclude that just because there's a temporary ceasefire that these hatreds that go back millennia are going to be over with. And to the degree that he can exercise that influence, it depends ultimately here at home. And he's got to make sure the economy works. He's got to make sure that the DOGE stuff, all of his initiatives, the border, that is what gives him the power.
And one of his other initiatives has been to take over D.C. and to deploy the National Guard, which he has done. What's interesting this week about that deployment of the National Guard and Donald Trump is that the disintegrating left is revealing themselves once again. We have Dana Bash getting in and saying, well, January 6th was the worst, most violent moment in recent history in D.C. And Hakeem Jeffries trying to convince everybody that crime is at a 32-year low. But on the other hand, an ABC News anchor, Kyra Phillips, confessed that she had been jumped by a vagrant some weeks ago. So the left can't quite get their narrative straight.
And she said somebody was murdered out here. Somebody was this. So that's a 3070 issue crime. I don't know why the left does it. The border is a 37 issue. The trans biological men competing in female sports is a 37, maybe 40, 60, but it doesn't matter. They're on the losing end. So they're going to make an argument that the official FBI crime rates show that there is a drop-off. There's only 174 murders. Well, that's a lot. And more importantly, we all know two things. That the police union in Washington is complaining that they are doctoring crime statistics to make it look lower so they don't have to hire police. And that's not accurate. Number two, for the last 5 years, if you go online, anybody, and you want to find the FBI murder rate for 2025, 24, 23, good luck. It's so far behind. I think it's 21 or 20. They're years behind, and it's inaccurate because most of these blue cities will not report crime statistics to the FBI clearinghouse because they don't want to give the impression that their cities are dangerous or that there's an inordinate black crime rate or something like that. So the statistics in most cases are worthless. So we don't know what the crime rate is, but it's empirically or firsthand or anecdotally, a lot of people think it's a very dangerous place. So all they had to do, again, the left, all they had to do was saying, well, Mr. President, let's work together to make sure there's a There's not a crime spree. We're going to clean up the city. If you disagree with them, they could have said, we don't think you need to nationalize for a month or two the police force. Let's find other ways. They can't do that. They have to scream and yell. Highcomb Jeffries, what's your alternative, Highcomb? Are you going to say that there's no crime, it's just going down? If that's true, Speaker, not any longer, Minority Leader Jeffries, do you walk around, which neighborhoods do you walk around Washington at night? I've walked around in the last 3 or 4 years. It's not very safe. I was in a major hotel. I won't give you the name, but I would say it was in a 3-minute walk or 5-minute walk of the White House. And I had I think it was 3 years ago, a flight at 5 in the morning from 6 in the morning from Reagan. So I got up, packed, went down. I thought, I'll just go out there early. So at 5:30, I got my little suitcase to go out. And they have those double doors in the East Coast. There's the first door, and then there's the cold. It's kind of like to keep the temperature down, and then the outdoor. And in that door, there was 2 people fighting. One person was trying to rob the other person, and they weren't people in the hotel. They were 2 people fighting outside where it was too cold, and they took their fight right in there. And I was standing right there. And then I went over because it was too early, and the person was not around the desk, so I went and yelled, and they called the police, and she kind of shrugged and said they're not going to come here. And that was Washington, D.C. And it's not a safe place. Everybody knows it's not a safe place. So why would you think that's a winning issue? How dare he try to stop crime in Washington? He's a Nazi. No, you just give us an alternative. Once again, give us an alternative. What he needs to do is follow up. So he says, I'm coming in for 30 or 40 days. I will beef up the police as a force multiplier to free them to do their other work. We'll have the guys patrol the streets. And this is part of a long-term solution. So I am going to help federal funds. It's run by the federal government, the district, and we will hire, 500 more policemen. But it still won't work if you have a federal attorney, which you do, that lets people out under federal, because it's run by the feds. They do have home rule, but ultimately the federal government runs D.C., but they need prosecutors that will prosecute.
They sure do. So Victor Kash Patel's at work, and he has been releasing evidence of Shifty Schiff. And the recent evidence, this is copious evidence that he is the source of a lot of leaks about the Russian collusion to fuel it and keep it going, as we kind of suspected, but now we have the evidence of that.
Yeah, everybody thought that he was, but these were not criminal offenses because he did the following. They would catch him in the hallway during the Russian collusion hoax, they being either CNN or MSNBC, and they would say something like, Representative Schiff, as the minority leader on the House Select Intelligence Committee, are you worried about Russian collusion? Is there any evidence? Chairman Nunes has not found any. And he'd go like this, well, I can't disclose it because I'm bound by rules of the House, but let me tell you, what I'm seeing is scaring me. And he would go on TV that. I can't talk about it. I cannot talk about it, but believe me, if you could see what I could see. And he did that. So I always thought he'd get away with it because he wasn't under oath, but apparently there's evidence that he violated criminal classified statutes. The other thing that they've got him on is that for years, apparently, he claimed that his primary residence was in Maryland, and he had a place in Los Angeles that he did the same with. So
sounds like Latita James.
Oh, Latita James. You did it in Virginia, didn't you? You said that you lived in a condo in Virginia, so you should get a reduction in your property taxes and your mortgage rate, but you also cannot do that if you are a New York elected official, and you knew that because you also declared your residence was in New York. But the other thing they got him on is he was asked point blank, did you or did you not meet with Alexander Vindman, who prompted, remember, the first impeachment, or the whistleblower Eric Ciaramella? No, I haven't. And we know that was a complete lie. In other words, the catalyst for the Trump impeachment came from Vindman, who was born in Ukraine. I think he's a dual citizen. Not that that matters, but I only mention that because he's been involved in middlemen schemes of arms transfers to Ukraine. And he was on the call, and he said that Trump said this and this, and it was inappropriate. So then he called somebody, Mr. Saramella, who was not on the call, and told him that. And then Mr. Salamera blew the whistle by going to whom? Adam Schiff. And Adam Schiff said that was not true, that he had not met with them, and he had. So he's got a lot of levels of exposure, and he keeps talking. That's the thing about all these people, Clapper, Brennan, Schiff, McCabe. They go on TV, they keep talking, and they don't know from day 1 to day 2 what they said on day 4 or 5 ago. So they just keep lying. They keep contradicting themselves. Clapper goes on, what are they doing me? I never said anything about the Russia. I never saw the dossier. And then there's this stuff coming out when he said, what do you think of the dossier? And the guy said, it doesn't seem, well, it could be true. So he's on record, and yet he keeps contradicting himself. So whether they're indictable, I mean, you don't really put in jail U.S. senators like, you don't. Menendez, it was hard to do. And Schiff, it's going to be very interesting to see if these people have to pay a price for the whole thing they did.
That Menendez, his stick was a lot of monetary
gold bars.
I know, gold bars in his house and
his
bundles of money and
in his sport jacket.
Yeah,
but he'd been doing stuff like that for a long time.
Do you know what they finally got him on?
You know what got him in
trouble?
Did
they finally get him on?
Why did they go after him then? He'd been doing that for years. They all knew that.
Yeah, and it was under Biden, right? So it was only a few years
Obama
ago.
went out. They started looking at him during because he was skeptical. He was a big supporter of Israel because he had a large Jewish American constituency in New Jersey. So he wasn't on board for the Iran deal. And they basically slapped his wrist and said, listen, you get back on board. And the same thing was true with Biden when he was trying to beg to get back in the Iran deal. Menendez seemed skeptical for political reasons. Not that he cared. I mean, he's not a man of principle. But as soon as you did that, bam, the next thing you knew, their federal attorney said that he had been taking money. People forget that about Biden. He weaponized the FBI, he weaponized the CIA, he weaponized the DOJ, he weaponized the IRS, as you saw with Hunter Biden. And he always did the murder in the cathedral, the T.S. Eliot murder in cathedral play. Will somebody not relieve me of this man? Why is Donald Trump not indicted? I didn't say anything. Why is it? And then his little minions would run back like little mice to Merrick Garland. Joe Biden wants him indicted. You better get a special counsel right now. It's November 18th. He just declared that he was going to run for president 3 days ago. And you know what? Fannie Will's boyfriend is meeting in the White House right now. And Michael Angelo's just left the DOJ. He's going to go work for Alvin Bragg. What are we going to do? Well, I'll name Jack Smith. That'll do my part. That's how it worked.
Well,
same day.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about people being indicted for political reasons, or at least feeling like they might be, after these messages. Stay with us and we'll be right back.
Hey folks, getting the medicine you trust shouldn't have to be this hard, but for many Americans it still is. Normally, insurance companies tell your doctor what they can and can't prescribe, blocking access to treatments that patients actually want and need. But there is a better way, and that's why I want you to know about All Family Pharmacy. They're helping people across the country get access to treatments like ivermectin, mebendazole, hydroxychloroquine, methylene blue, antibiotics, and a lot more, all without insurance or unnecessary delays. They've recently lowered their prices to make it even easier and more affordable for families to stock up and stay prepared. The process is simple. Fill out a short form online, a licensed doctor reviews your request, and your medications ship fast to your door in just a few days. If you believe in medical freedom and taking charge of your own health, this is the pharmacy for you. Check them out. Get what you need to protect your family. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Victor and use the code VICTOR10 to save 10%.
Welcome back to the Victor Davis Hanson Show. You can find Victor on social media at X. His handle is @VD Hanson, and on Facebook at Hanson's Morning Cup. And we also like to invite everybody to join something unaffiliated with us on Facebook, the Victor Davis Hanson Fan Club, which we are not in control of, but they do a great job getting new stuff and old stuff of Victor's that they post. So speaking of people being afraid of being indicted for political reasons, Drew Barrymore, the queen of the left, most famous for bending the knee to Dylan Mulvaney or calling Kamala Mamala, has
That's
recently
sad, by the
been.
way, because she's from such a Lionel Barrymore.
I was going to ask you about that. She's
It's a
the granddaughter, right, of Lionel Barrymore?
Great granddaughter.
Is it great granddaughter?
Maybe. He was so great in It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
Potter.
Yeah. He had a long career
was-
that I've seen him in a lot of
He
movies.
suffered from arthritis.
Yeah. Anyways, she was on Bill Maher recently and said that she really admired Bill Maher. She's always kissing up to the person that's next to her. But anyways, a lot for all of his bravado about what he thinks is the truth himself. So that's a quote from Drew Barrymore. And that he was still doing this when it was so dangerous to do this, to speak his truth, I guess is what she's trying to say. But doesn't she remember all the stuff they did to Donald Trump? Why would she consider the Trump times more dangerous?
Because she's a
crazy.
leftist. And because he's a leftist.
She was trying to obfuscate that and pretend like, well, she was maybe somewhere
They're both
in the middle.
leftists. And there's two types of cancel culture. It's true. Colbert got canceled, and these other night show people are going to be canceled. And I think The View will be canceled. But this type of cancel is not political, it's economic. And so basically late night talk, like Colbert loses money, in his case, 40 million. And so does Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon. They all lose money. And The View is a complete disaster. But they were willing to subsidize it, sort of like the big corporations subsidize book publishing because they get ideas out, and they were on the left. So this was important, as they understood everybody was going to get mad if you canceled Colbert because you couldn't go on there if you were Adam Schiff or Schumer. There was like 180 guests the last couple of years, and there was no one Republican, Liz Cheney. So the point is they were willing to subsidize that, and then the mood of the country's changed. In other words, the left is in disarray, and the Democratic Party is at an all-time low, and they're losing money. And then somebody came along, a new management said, am I missing something? These people are not talented. They're just hacks, and their cause is not popular right now, and I'm spending all this money, and they're attacking me, the owner, Disney. I'm not going to do it anymore. So they're starting to cancel. But the other cancellation methodology is not economic. It comes from the left. And what Bill, I don't know whether he believes he's going to be canceled because he's not making any money for HBO, or whether the left will go after him. Because if he keeps talking about he doesn't believe in trans biological men and women's sports, or there is high crime, or he's going to get in trouble, but not with the right, with the left. They are going to start going after them, and they cancel people. And they debank people, as we saw with Trump. They have all sorts of methodologies. I mean, if you ask yourself, who in America right now is swatting people? The left. And who's canceling cancel culture? If they say an incorrect thing, they're persona non grata. The left. And so who says that comedians can't say certain things? The left. Who says that you can't use certain references? The left. And they know that. Look at John Fetterman. He's canceled. He's been ostracized.
You think so? We won't hear from him again because he
they just turned on him. He just, I mean, they do that. All parties do that, but he's not asked to go on the Colbert Show.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Jimmy Kimmel apparently has become an Italian citizen because
Promises.
Like Barrymore. He thinks he might have to leave
George
the United States.
Clooney, he's in it. Yes, they all say that. And so what they do is they say, I'm leaving because of Donald Trump. It's not safe. It's Nazi Germany. And then they make a performance art, like trip to England. Like, didn't Ellen DeGeneres do that? And then they go over there and nobody knows who they are. And it's like, I don't like the climate. I don't like this culture, but how can I crawl back without anybody finding me out? They all come back. And most of them don't go anyway, unfortunately. And so he has a place in Italy, and it sounds really dramatic. Oh, he's such a man of principle. He might just leave the country. No, he'll go there for a couple of weeks and say he's leaving. He'll come back. They all do.
They all do.
I wish they would
or
leave.
They don't go.
I wish they would
they
leave
would
just
leave.
because if somebody says they hate, it's like that representative from Illinois said it's her first allegiance was as a Guatemalan. Remember her? She said that in Spanish in Mexico. Well, then why don't you leave? That would be wonderful. No animus intended. You'd be much happier in Guatemala. You could enjoy the advantages of Guatemala.
She won't leave, though. We know
They
that.
never do.
No, they do.
They
sure
they
don't.
never do.
All right, Victor. So
This is a very wealthy country. People can say all they want about it. There's someone, I think I've been almost every country in the Middle East except Iran, maybe a couple of the Gulf states. Trust me, this
Yeah.
is the place you want to live.
Yeah, it's much nicer here, and they always
Everything is nicer.
Yeah.
Everything works, at least not as well as it used to, but it still works. You can still do what we're doing right now without not having a government person knock at the door for a while.
Well, let's talk about somebody else who's got free speech rights, and that's Candace Owen. Apparently, as our audience knows, she has said that the French President Macron's wife started out life as a male, yada, yada. And so she's talked about that narrative and even actually started a series called, what was that series called? 1 second, I'll find it for you. Becoming Bridget. So she's doubled and tripled down, and now Macron has a private eye researching her background. And so that conflict is escalating.
I don't quite understand. That's not a matter of opinion. That's a matter of ascertaining a knowable fact. So France has birth certificates. France has surgery records. So if she really does believe that Macron's wife was a male and assume the gender of a sister or something, then all they have to do is go investigate the birth records, or they just look at, and they can find out if they're covered up or something, and then it would be known. There would be people all over France that would know. There'd be a doctor. I mean, she's not that old.
So you're suggesting that Macron could just let this information out instead of
Well, I think he already
starting
has.
a fight?
I think he already has released her birth certificate, and I think he's already dared Candace to find medical records to substantiate her accusation. I don't understand why she doesn't just let it alone. It is damaging to him because he does have this reputation of being a dandy, and there have been rumors that he might have other tendencies, and then to suggest that he was married. But it was the same thing about Michelle when some of the hard right said that she was what'd they call her? They had a term that she was trans and that she was a male, and they measured her digits on her fingers and everything. But all you'd have to do is, say that the 2 birth certificates were forged of her daughters, or, you know what I'm saying? These are not hard facts to find out. Or you could even, so Macron is getting hurt by this, he thinks. So he's going to go after Candace? What's he going to find? Candace's parents, I think, came from the Caribbean. I think they were divorced. She might have had a typical middle-class upbringing. She, as young African-American students are, she had a flirtation with the left. I think she was an Obama voter the first time. And then for a variety of reasons, she became conservative, and then she was very articulate, very well-spoken, and I think Charlie Kirk kind of brought her into the fold, and she was with him, his organization, I should say, and very successful. I've met her, had been dinner with her. She's very nice, but there is a point, and she was a big advocate of Kanye West, remember? But there was a point, I don't know the exact date, where some people on the right went over. I don't know what that was. So people like Candace or Steve Bannon, and I want to be careful because I don't know what Steve has said on everything, but Candace said that the Nagasaki bombing, if I'm not mistaken, was targeted because there were Christian Japanese there. It was a secondary target, Candace. They didn't know they were going to bomb it until, I don't know, an hour before they bombed it. I think a lot of it has to do with October 7th. I think at that point, when Israel had no choice but to retaliate, a lot of people felt that was wrong, and then the Trump bombing of Iran. And so a lot of the MAGA, Tucker Carlson was the same. He was very critical of Trump, said it was going to be World War III, very critical. He's had people on his broadcasts that have questioned whether Israel's committing or war criminals, what they're doing in Gaza. I remember we had Daryl Cooper, the blogger, who went on and said Churchill was a terrorist. World War II was preventable if the British had been able to negotiate with Hitler after the fall of France, et cetera, et
So
cetera. I
your
don't know what
point about
triggered all
these
this, but
stalwart MAGA commentators and influencers is what they went over the line, or some.
I think that there was a criticism of them that